Hello and welcome. This part we're going to be talking about ancient Egyptian writing, um, and how this influenced culture and what we do have about ancient Egyptian writing. So, although ancient Egyptians absorbed knowledge from both the Mesopotamians and that of the Nubians, they developed their own written script. So it differentiates from cuneiform. For official documents, they used pictographic script known as hieroglyphics, which was developed around 3000 BCE. Now, Egyptian hieroglyphics include about 700 pictures in three categories. And the three categories are ideograms, which are signs indicating things or ideas, phonograms, which are signs that indicate sound, and determinants, which is signs clarifying the meaning of other signs. So colors were used to signify importance and relationships among the hieroglyphics. Because Egyptians employed this formal script mainly for religious inscriptions on buildings or sacred objects, such as on the pyramid or pyramid ceilings, or that of their cartouches or sarcophagi. The ancient Egyptians used colors to differentiate meanings. Egyptians employed these formal scripts, which the Greeks refer to as ta hieroglyphica, which means the sacred carved letters. Hieroglyphics were not known, that was not a term used by ancient Egyptians. This is where the modern word hieroglyphics comes from, the ta hieroglyphica. The hieroglyphics system was used until about 400 of the Common Era, when it was replaced by the Coptic alphabet. They developed other similar scripts for everyday life, so rather than carving. And Egyptians also developed a quick handwriting that was cursive script known as demotic, which is the Greek word for people, a simpler, quicker version of writing. Now, with hieroglyphics that are used in sacred text, as time went along, it became very formulaic. There isn't a large amount of development among hieroglyphics as time progressed, or complex sentence structures. Often it was very formulaic. So, if you're going to be going and using, like putting your legend into your temple, you're going to be putting it in the same format as a previous pharaoh. You're going to make sure that, like, for example, every pharaoh has an origin story, and this origin story looks very familiar. That a baby being reborn as a king, they have the symbol for the king, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Um, and that it's like the god made them, and this is it's really like viewed as the god made them out of pottery. So every single pharaoh has this kind of origin story in which it was very formulaic. And to understand this example of how formulaic it is, when you get the first female pharaoh, and she is known, she calls herself a pharaoh. This is Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut's origin story that they actually carve into her in her tomb in the Valley of the Kings actually has a twin has images of male babies in there. Whereas in she is a woman who declared herself pharaoh, so she should have had a female baby. But just how formulaic it is, her origins story on her tomb was just, they said, hey, you need to go, now that she's pharaoh instead of the pharaoh's wife, you need to go carve this on. And so they just used the same symbols and same forms. At first, this took archaeologists a long time to figure out, like why we have this male pharaoh, but same name as the queen at one point. What is it going to do? And then her origin story is also male. They've actually determined that it's because of how formulaic hieroglyphics tend to be. They tend to be very similar. In fact, the art of Egypt doesn't really transcend much. It doesn't break the mold. images are very much the same. It doesn't have a lot of growth, as we will see, like with the Greeks or the Romans. Everything is, let's make it as systematic as possible. Hence the reason why so many when pharaohs begin to do their origin stories and stuff on their tomb walls and on the ceiling, that it could be done very quickly, which it's very labor intensive to do hieroglyphics in stone, but they're able to do it extremely quickly and efficiently because it's like just copy and paste essentially. That's not to say that it didn't take a great deal of work or that it was very complex. But that's how we view it. It's not until Akhenaten, who is the heretic pharaoh, that he tries to redo this, and it changes how he looks. In fact, he's depicted as being very ugly, and he wanted to have realism. He's viewed as him and his kids of having oddly shaped heads, and not very attractive. And in fact, his wife Nefertiti, who we have which is she's viewed as one of the most beautiful women ever to live. Some of her statues are very beautiful, but some of them she has weirdly shaped heads, so we're not quite sure why that is the case. But just understand that hieroglyphics were used primarily for the pharaoh and for the gods and goddesses, and less for everyday people. With the simpler script, the Demotic script, you see this far more with handwritten papyri that we have, particularly when it comes to medicine, where there's a little more quick handwriting involved. You also have graffiti, and graffiti was very big in ancient Egypt. If you uh, uh, on any of the tombs, you'll see some graffiti as they were practicing their symbols. But also you have it for to show displeasure or to show the pleasure of the gods. We have graffiti on the stones that create the pyramids of saying like we are the workers of the pharaoh. We're his favorite. This graffiti is very pronounced throughout ancient Egypt. But we tend to look at hieroglyphics as being the most important. And to understand that, with hieroglyphics, one of the most important things is the Rosetta Stone, and not the online learning language app. But the Rosetta Stone is, when it's discovered in the 19th century, is the key to understanding a lot of the hieroglyphics and a lot of the Demotic writing, because it is the keystone, like a translator, so that when it was discovered, all of a sudden, that in the 19th and the 19th through the 21st centuries, actually, that you have people who could read and learn to read ancient Egypt, which had been considered lost. Like, these are beautiful pictures. We know that they denote some kind of pharaoh, but we're not quite sure what it is. But after the Rosetta Stone's discovery and translation, it allowed for more more reading, and this really brings up the rise of ancient Egyptian culture, and this kind of demystification of ancient Egyptian culture, as well as the romanticism that we still feel today. Ancient Egypt tends to be the culture that we think of when we think of ancient cultures. So that is the basics of hieroglyphics and ancient Egyptian writing.